Hey folks, we're about to start another episode of Ask Us Anything about electrochemistry. But before we begin, because we have some extra time, there are a few things I'd like to go over first. While we're waiting for the live stream to start, type your question into the chat. The sooner we get your question, the sooner we'll be able to answer it when the live stream starts. We usually try to answer questions in the order that we receive them, but it's definitely possible that we get so many questions that when your question comes up, we're out of time. If you are a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 YouTube member, you do get priority in us answering your question. You also have the opportunity to join us on the stream to either share slides or talk to us in person about your specific electrochemistry research questions. If you are a Tier 1 or Tier 2 member on our YouTube channel, you will find in the community post the link and password to join us on our broadcasting platform. We get a lot of questions about electrochemistry, whether it's through our YouTube comments, webinars, email, phone conversations. We get lots of questions from people about electrochemistry. And sometimes responding to a YouTube comment or trying to describe a cyclic voltammogram over the phone isn't always the easiest way to teach or describe electrochemistry. That's why we created this live stream. In the Ask Us Anything About Electrochemistry live stream, you can ask us any questions you have about electrochemistry, and we can use better tools and take more time to describe some of these electrochemical processes to help you with your research and understanding of electrochemistry. Now, in our time of doing this live stream, we've observed that if you ask a very, very specific question, we might not be able to answer it. It'll be a little bit too specific for us. On the other side, if you ask a very broad question and you're interested in just a very broad understanding of cyclic voltammetry, we have separate tools, we have other resources to help you. So we do have a YouTube video on cyclic voltammetry, an introduction to the subject. And if you're interested in more of a long-form course on, say, electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, we have a 5-part EIS webinar series for our Tier 2 YouTube members that you can access at any time. Now, if you weren't aware, Pine Research Instrumentation is a company that produces a wide array of high-quality electrochemical research equipment, from potentiostats to electrodes, electrochemical rotators, cells, different types of accessories. Pine Research has been supporting electrochemistry research and teaching for decades. Recently, we have developed new electrochemical simulation software called Aftermath Live. Aftermath Live is an online streaming platform where you can simulate popular electrochemical techniques like cyclic voltammetry. It's a powerful research tool, as you might simulate a cyclic voltammogram to support an electrochemical mechanism for your redox reaction that you're studying. But Aftermath Live and cyclic voltammetry simulation is also a very powerful tool when it comes to just learning electrochemistry. In fact, in previous episodes of the live stream, we have used Aftermath Live and our simulation software to answer some of the questions that you have. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can get a 10% discount on your first month of the basic and research editions of Aftermath Live by using the coupon code PINEYouTube10 when you're at checkout. Aftermath Live is a powerful tool and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Go to aftermathlive.com to check it out. Link is in the description below. Our live streams are normally on Fridays from 1 to 3 p.m. They normally last about 2 hours, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. If you miss the live stream, you'll always be able to watch it on our YouTube channel, and in the description we put timestamps for every question that was asked. This way you can look through the description and find the questions that are most relevant to your research and then watch those at your leisure. Also, we apologize in advance if we mispronounce your name. If on a YouTube channel you can put anything you want as a name. It could be a Pokemon, it could be a string of numbers. But if we call you out and we accidentally mispronounce your name, we apologize in advance. Lastly, please do not spam the chat. We've had numerous instances of people either talking about inappropriate things or constantly filling the chat up with some kind of spam. We will remove you if you do that. Let's keep the chat very clean and just talk about electrochemistry. Sometimes it takes a while before we're able to answer your question. So if you keep typing your question into the chat and spam the chat, then we will remove you from the chat. But if it's been a while and we may have forgotten about your question, one message as a gentle reminder is all that's required. All right, I think that's all of the housekeeping things. Now, let's start the live stream.
Boy, that took a second.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, it's like, hey, guess what? You're not going to pop up when I click buttons. Why am I even clicking buttons then?
I think we had good timing. I think
I clicked it when
slight.
it seemed like it was fine. I don't know what's going on. Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hello.
It's like you click buttons and you feel like you know how to use electronics softwares and computerized devices. I'm old. These aren't the right words. It's not how you say things, you know.
No. You're doing good. We have a little bit of warm up before we start this live stream. As always, I guess we did this last week and this week but before that we had quite a bit of a delay. There was 2 weeks. 2 weeks you were out. You were in Europe. You were still able to help me with co-hosting the voltammetry series, which is still up on
Sort
YouTube.
of. Yes. One of those weeks I was in an Italian hotel and the internet was not the best. It was like I was watching you and hearing words and seeing no video change. And it was like, I hope this is working for like the real world, because like from my perspective, I'm hearing the things that Alex is saying and his face was just stuck like that. And I'm like, oh gosh, this is going to be a very weird webinar for the folks watching if all they're seeing is a static image of you while you deliver the stuff. But it turns out it was just me because I was in a terrible hotel. Well, the hotel was fine, but the internet wasn't the best. Anyway,
Yes.
It did work out sort of.
Yeah.
So that was fine.
Well, we got some questions to start off with. Of course, type your questions into the chat, whether you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, or X. We have a question from
Majulika,
who's asking, where should we start to read electrochemistry? And just kind of, I guess, a further clarification, where should we start to read electrochemistry? From very basic to master in electrochemistry, please suggest reading materials. This is always a good question. So there's a textbook. I feel like we should always have, like, next time we get this question, I'm gonna put it in there. But there's a book called Electrochemical Methods, Fundamentals and Applications, and I'm gonna find that so I can show you electrochemical methods, fundamentals, and applications, and then
commonly known as Bard and Faulkner,
commonly referred to as Bard and Faulkner.
The Heinemann book too, maybe.
Yeah,
is that the one? Am I mixing it up?
Wait, Chrome screen. There we go. So I'm just showing you on my screen here. It's a book that looks like this, and I'll put this in the chat so you can see it. There's just a link from oh, whoops, I can't because this link is too long and YouTube won't allow me to do it. If you do I'll just type in the title into the chat so you can see it. It's not allowing me to delete this. Here we go. That's the name of the book by Bard and Faulkner. And White. We can't forget Henry White is on it. This is the 3rd edition, commonly the 2nd edition, which is the most common version, just because the 3rd edition just came out maybe a year ago at best. So a lot of people already had the 2nd edition. There are significant changes between the 2nd and 3rd edition, but not enough that it would matter for like, the basics are still the same, thankfully. But this is the book. It'll look like either this or this. Now this is unfortunately it is the quintessential textbook on electrochemistry, but it's also one of the hardest textbooks in electrochemistry. It's very complete, but that also means it's very difficult as well. There's a lot of equations, a lot of derivations of equations, and it's kind of hard to. It's just hard to read. It's just hard to read. People struggle with it. When I was a graduate student, I probably read the first chapter of that book maybe like 5 or 6 times, like carefully, painfully, like just going through it each year. And I would always pick up a little bit of it, but it's not like I read it one time and it was like, oh yeah, that's fine. I get it.
I don't think Bard or Faulkner read through it and understood it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's I just added into the chat as well. This is another one. If I steal the share, where is it? This is another one that some people often cite or quote or whatever you want to say. This is the Kissinger and Heinemann one. I actually have no experience with this one personally. I did not use this textbook, but the laboratory techniques in electroanalytical chemistry, as you're seeing here, might be more practically based. I guess it's laboratory. It's more I don't know, research or lab technique based. But those are the two textbooks in my observation that people tend to reference, let's just say. So this one here is another one to consider. Now, the other main thing, I guess, that I would add,
oh yeah, I added this one.
Okay.
I'll talk about that when you're done.
No
Sorry.
problem. Yeah, I guess the main thing that I would say, and Habji has said the same thing that you did, Alex, which is the Bard and Faulkner was a textbook for my grad electroanalytical chemistry course 10 years ago. It's super difficult to read and comprehend. I had the same experience. I also have used and worked with Bard and Faulkner many times and over years, of course. And when I did a course in graduate school in electroanalytical chemistry, I had various, we went through some of the chapters in various degrees and used some of the homework problems and things like that. So I've done some of that kind of stuff. I guess my point to say about Bard and Faulkner and possibly the Heinemann book and possibly any text to a certain extent is that it's like very academic. I find, probably to Majulika's original question, right? Like, you're trying to learn electrochemistry. Now, if what you're asking is, well, I want to learn electrochemistry to understand it fundamentally, that is sort of academic, right? But in a lot of cases, my guess, again, I'm just kind of guessing here, is that you're either in grad school or thinking about going to grad school, are in a group doing electrochemistry or thinking about joining a group that's doing electrochemistry. Here's the problem. Learning academic electrochemistry will only get you so far. It just will. Like, now, to a certain extent, two things. One is that the practical side of electrochemistry, like doing research, the practical side of laboratory work, does require a baseline knowledge academically, I would say. So for instance, if you're doing stuff in the lab, to just be more specific about this, it's like if you're doing stuff in the lab and you're working with a potentiostat in a glass cell and you're pouring electrolyte in it and you have a platinum wire and you have a glassy carbon disc and you have a silver chloride reference electrode, I don't care whether you know the Butler-Volmer equation or not. You got to figure out how to use that stuff. You got to figure out what to do, what to put where, what to connect. None of that, like the Nernst equation isn't going to help you at all. Sorry, Alex. Like,
hey,
okay,
I resent that.
It's so
what I help you a lot.
It's a ton, right? But knowing the reaction quotient of your silver chloride reaction will not help you figure out how to connect it, where to put it, and why. That's all practical stuff, all right? Now, obviously, knowledge of the Nernst equation will help you because you'll understand why the voltage and the potential is doing what it's doing and why you're getting certain current and not. Okay, so I'm not trying to just like totally discount the idea that you should learn the basics, because you obviously should. And if you're doing electrochemistry research and you don't know, at least with some level of familiarity, like what the Nernst equation is, what the Butler-Volmer equation is, the concepts of mass transport and kinetics, the ideas of potential and current, like, you need to learn a little bit. Okay, fair enough. My point, though, is that when people are asking this question, I do find it to be something probably that they're like, I really need help with the research part. And there's two difficult answers to that. One of them is that time and practice, which there's no substitute and there's no textbook for that. You just have to get in the lab and just bang your head against a wall and try stuff, right? The other is that, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't really any good text or accepted kind of, stuff that's going to like be the thing that will help you get a crash course in the laboratory. Now, maybe the Heinemann book has some of that, but like, people often look at learning the academic stuff, Barden Faulkner, that kind of stuff. And those are helpful again, but like, I think a lot of people are feeling like, I just need to know how to do all this stuff, and I don't. And my advisor won't help me, or whatever it is. Everybody's sort of that's why we do these live streams, right? I mean, that's why we're here.
Exactly.
We're trying to, when people ask me questions about like, what should I do with my impedance, or what should I do with my battery stuff, I try to give you direct answers as best I can. I have years of experience researching these things, and I knew what it was like to be in the lab, not knowing what in the world I was doing, and stumbling through it and eventually finding my way. And I would like to decrease the time constant for you out there.
Right.
See, there's a fun nerdy reference for you. If I can, that's what it's kind of one of my raison d'etre in my job, is to try to help people overcome some of those barriers that are seemingly insurmountable. So anyway, I don't know if you want to talk about what's the other one, understanding.
Oh yeah. There's another book. I also linked it in the chat. It's called Understanding Voltammetry, by Compton and Craig Banks, Richard Compton and Craig Banks. And this book I found to be very helpful. It's not just electric, so it's not going to talk about impedance spectroscopy or batteries or fuel cells, but it's primarily going to be focused on the kind of redox molecules, some homogeneous, heterogeneous catalysis related stuff. But I have found this book, when I read this book, I personally find it to be easier to understand than Barden Faulkner when it comes to certain concepts. There's just the wording, the descriptions, the examples. There's a lot of examples in this book of like systems, and like, oh, you just learned about this super complicated equation, and you learned about like, oh, there's a rate constant. Well, why is the rate constant different? Well, here's some examples and reasons why. And he describes it in, I don't know, kind of like, this is good if you have a chemistry background, I would say. If you're a chemist, this book is good. Also, whenever you cite things, and I do this often, I always say I got it straight out of Compton because of his last name here. So that's
where your joke came from.
That's where my joke came from.
Totally went over my head when you did it in one of your webinars. Was it the voltammetry webinar?
Yes, yeah. And then you looked it up, and you're like,
you did it twice, and I kind of got it the second time, which just shows you how lame I am, and my knowledge of music is like stuck with Tchaikovsky. Like, that's the last time I was aware of new music.
You have very good understanding of music. I bet if I told you any little bit of, let's see, what is it? It would be like classic rock from like 80s, 90s, 200s. Yeah. You would know it. You would know it in a heartbeat.
I do, but hip hop and rap, straight out of Compton, that's a rap group.
Yeah.
Is it NWA?
Yeah, I mean,
or Sugar Hill Gang. These are some names that I know.
Yeah.
I don't know who these are.
I mean, unfortunately, you can't do a Google search and get a good answer, except for the fact that they made a movie, like a kind of a
that I remember. I didn't see it, but I remember.
Yeah,
because it had the black and white label that used to be like, danger. This record has bad words on it.
Yeah, explicit content.
When I was younger, I had to like try to convince my mom that no, I should be able to buy it. It's not a big deal. I remember those days being in high school.
And now that kind of language is just normal.
Well, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
So, and if it weren't for the fact that this is our job, you would hear some of it from me as well.
Yes.
Because I can't help myself. But we are in a professional environment, so none of that potty language.
Exactly.
I don't know how we got here. Straight out of Compton.
Straight outta
the
Compton,
book.
that's all.
Yes.
Yeah,
the
the
book.
book.
The book is good, and we got onto other things. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah.
And we will. But yeah, we'll continue talking. If you have further questions.
Yeah, and
we'll get to them.
Majulika, that's the other thing. I do see
Oh,
another
yeah, she had
question from
another
you.
question.
We'll get to your question in a bit because there's a few before you. But feel free to ask some of these questions. We will get to them in time. It just takes a little bit of time to talk through some of these things. So we appreciate your patience.
Yeah.
And to that point, TT has the next question here. So it says, what is the boundary referred to in the infinite diffusion? Is it the double layer? Also, is it preferred to have a larger thickness of the double layer or not, and why? The boundary in the infinite diffusion is that there isn't one.
Or in this case, he has finite.
Oh, finite. Oh, I just can't read.
In the finite. Yeah,
in
I know.
The, you know what?
Finite. Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a dyslexia thing, but I saw in
Oh, yeah.
the finite,
Yeah,
and the in went to the finite.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
pointing
yeah,
that
yeah.
out.
I
I'm
have
like,
that.
then
too.
there isn't one if it's infinite. Okay.
Yeah.
No, the double layer and the diffusion boundary are like distinct kinds of things. So the just to give you a bit of a scale, if you will, right? The double layer is sometimes called the inner Helmholtz plane. Sometimes the Debye length is talked about in a similar way, right? I don't know if this is exactly the same concept. It's not.
Debye length is related. I never remember.
I'm conflating them a little bit, but I know they're somewhat related. In any case, the thickness of the double layer is in the range of a nanometer, right? It's something in that range. It's small.
Yeah,
it's very small,
depending on your supporting electrolyte. But it is that. And you can always, I think TT, you probably watched my my webinar series on voltammetry. Probably, if you haven't, part 1, which is on YouTube right now, you can watch it. The double layer just refers to the difference between phi m and phi s. Everything in that region between those 2 points constitutes the double layer. Inner Helmholtz plane, outer Helmholtz plane, diffuse layer. That's it.
And it's nanometers thick. Diffusion is orders of magnitude larger.
Yeah, it's on the microns.
It's at least hundreds to thousands of nanometers, which is microns. Maybe even tens to hundreds of microns in some cases. So right. So those are distinctly different in their scale entirely, right? So what is the boundary? I think that part is actually somewhat, in some cases, I would say like nebulous, and in some cases definitely defined. Like one of the examples that I've given in the past is like a gas diffusion layer in a fuel cell, which is, it's literally a piece of paper. It's carbon. It's a piece of carbon paper. You can buy this if you've never made a fuel cell before. Apologies, you don't sort of have the reference I'm talking about. But you literally buy it. It's like you're buying a piece of printer paper, but it's made out of carbon. It's super fragile. It cracks under the slightest, a stiff breeze, and it cracks. It's super fragile. It's really hard to work with. But it's literally paper, right? And it's made of carbon, and it's porous, and it's technically some amount of thickness. It's probably like, I don't know, let's just say like 10 to 50 microns thick or something like that. So the boundary is x equals 0 and x equals 50 microns. If you're going laterally through it or whatever. So the finite boundary is literally the thickness of that. Now, there are cases where, for instance, you're rotating an electrode. The boundary layer is some thickness. You can measure it, experimentally. I've showed that with my Warburg webinars and things like that. You can get the diffusion layer thickness, but it's like, what is it? It's actually, it's a little more, I would say, almost nebulous, because it's like in solution and there's just solution everywhere. But it's like, I don't even know the best way to describe it. It's like the length through which the diffusion is taking place, and then beyond that point, it's too far away for the electrode to like even have any influence or communication, something like that. I don't know how you describe it.
I think of it, it is weird. They're kind of there are 2 layers in like an RDE. There's what's called the hydrodynamic boundary layer, and then there's the diffusion layer. And so the hydrodynamic boundary layer it's like there's bulk solution everywhere. And actually, I think hold on. I have give me a quick moment, and I think I think I have a, where it is. Okay, let me see if I think I go through it at some point. All right, so, all right. Yeah, here we go. All right, TT, hold on. so, um, so I gave this like, I need to like double check it. So this is like, so this is for a rotating disc electrode,
Hmm.
and there are so a couple things to note in a rotating disc electrode is, so first off, physically it looks like this, right? You have an electrode that looks like this. We sell these. We sell like the rotator itself. You hook up your potentiostat to this guy, and you put it in a cell. It has different parts, different ways to make contact. I always note that some of the equations and stuff that I show when doing this, it's like there's kinematic viscosity, and then there is sweep rate, and then there's velocity, and they all look the same in terms of symbols. But I'll be talking about like a little bit of the velocity. When you rotate an electrode, so imagine this is the electrode surface. This is like the shroud that's inert. As you rotate, you're bringing molecules from the bulk down here towards the electrode surface, and the velocity profile of the molecules change as a function of distance. And this is when you have, quote, laminar flow, which is when all the vectors of velocity all kind of move in the same direction. So this is what those things look like. So this is what's called the hydrodynamic boundary layer, if you will. So that's one boundary layer, and what this is it's kind of the point where the velocity in the y direction, kind of going into the electrode, if this is y, starts to go down a lot. So it's getting slower. The molecules are literally moving slower and slower and slower in this direction. So that is what we call a boundary layer, if we all. It's also called the stagnant layer, and this is something that exists in like fluid dynamics. And I'm not an engineer, so that's about all I can say about it. But then you have the diffusion layer thickness, which is the same thing as what we would call a that you have in a stationary electrode. So there's a diffusion layer thickness, which is just kind of where the concentration from the bulk changes as it gets close to the electrode surface. And I kind of superimpose these two things, and this diffusion layer is related to the diffusion coefficient, the kinematic viscosity, and the rotation rate of for RDE electrode. And then the boundary layer itself is related to the kinematic viscosity and the rotation rate, but they're different. So the diffusion layer much smaller than the hydrodynamic boundary layer. So that's just a clarification on the rotating disk, which I know is not what you were actually asking about, but that is a boundary, if you will, that that can be defined. The last part, so I guess, does that make sense? I mean, so TT, let us know if that makes sense, because
Yeah.
I think for finite diffusion, you are thinking about, okay, where is that diffusion layer thickness? When does it end and just become the bulk solution? And that's what we would define as a boundary. The last part of your question is it preferred to have a large thickness of the double layer or not? Why or why not? You want to have, ideally, you want to have as small a distance thickness of the double layer. You want the double layer ideally to be super tight. And the reason why is because, let's see, a lot of the mathematics about electron transfer happening, say, at the electrode surface only makes sense. It can only be at the electrode surface if the thickness is very short. If it's super wide, then you have this huge potential gradient away from the electrode, and electron transfer can happen in that space, but it's just not very well defined, if you will. The effective field strength of the potential that you're applying does not, it's spread across a really large area. It's like you want to apply 1 volt, but that 1 volt is spread across a large area. So different molecules will feel varying voltages as that function of distance. If you make the distance super tight, it's only when it's in that small region that it feels the full 1 volt. It's not feeling half a volt or 0.75 or 0.25, depending on where it is. It's only feeling 1 at the electrode, or like the vast majority of it. So that's why you want to have a very thin and tight double layer.
I would add to just, I guess, 2 things. Well,
Yeah.
maybe 2 things. One of them is that this is among the reasons probably lumped into why a lot of the times we suggest things like have high electrolyte concentration to minimize IR drop or whatever. I think that higher electrolyte concentration will lead to a tighter double layer. You can just imagine if there's not that much electrolyte present, like not that many ions around, it'll be like harder to get a nice tight double layer because you're trying to grab ions and they're like, there's none around. So then it'll be like thicker and more disperse. And so a thicker, double layer will lead to, so I think this through, right? It's like if the double layer is really thick, its capacitance is smaller. And if its capacitance is smaller, it has higher impedance.
Yeah, that's true.
So at low frequencies, right? So basically that's another sort of mathematical or other like secondary, if you want to think it through, benefit to having a tight double layer is that a tight double layer has a bigger capacitance, which means that it has a bigger capacitance because impedance is inversely related to capacitance. A larger capacitor, if you will, has a smaller impedance and it's more bypassable, basically, which is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
You can bypass the issues of the capacitor, so the electron transfer is better, something like that. Yeah.
Very true. All right. So hopefully
that kind of covers that.
That answers this question.
Let's see here. Okay, so I think TT was again commenting next on this wonderful meme.
Yeah, that's right.
so thank you for that. So yeah, with regard to the meme in the background, should EIS be done against OCP or reference electrode? What's the difference? Someone told me we only do it versus the reference to have 0 charge on the electrode surface before GCD, but not to study the actual behavior of the electrode. Okay, there's a lot of words here that are
they're very triggering.
They're just okay. I'll try to do this kindly because I appreciate.
It's TT.
I know.
He's our buddy.
I appreciate you very much, my friend. I do.
That's why I was asking questions. You're gonna set him straight.
It's just there's so much triggering for me here. There's just so much triggering. Okay. First of all, I made this meme. Because it's something that drives me crazy. But the other meme I could have made is actually part of your question. So again, I'll try to kind of talk through this as kindly as I can. It's not easy for me. I'm not a nice person. Okay. To put this rather indelicately, I'm not sure why people ask this. No, I know why people ask this question, because in your software, when you're running your potentiostat, you have you select impedance and then it loads the default parameters or whatever. And the default is usually 0 millivolts versus OCP. And you can pick if you want it to be versus OCP or versus ref. And so that causes the following thoughts to occur in the average electrochemist's brain. Number 1, I guess I should always do it at OCP. Hence this meme. Okay. And number 2, should I pick versus ref or versus OCP? As though there is an OCP reference electrode and there's a reference electrode. All potential is relative. Okay. I know what you're going to say. A platinum wire by itself has a potential. Don't go there. Don't go there.
I ain't going there.
I know you're thinking it.
No, I wasn't thinking
I know technically there's electrochemical potential. Like everything has a potential. Like you put a wire in solution by itself, it does have a potential. Okay. I'm not going through this crazy whatever. For practical purposes, because it's not wrong. I know.
No. You're on it. Man.
I was getting ahead of your thoughts. No. Okay. So every potential you're operating with is relative. It's relative. There's no such thing as like, well, I have my platinum electrode at 1 volt. That doesn't mean anything. 1 volt versus what? In what solution? Right? 1 volt versus OCP. Well, what's the OCP? 1 volt versus And NHE, okay, that means something. 1 volt versus SCE versus AgCl versus mercury sulfate. The reference matters, right? Reference electrodes themselves have potentials, right? So when you're picking versus reference electrode in your like software, what's the reference electrode? What is the physical thing connected to the end of the reference electrode cable in your cell? Because that's what it is. So at the end of the day, you should know the potential at which you want to do impedance. And this meme is funny, but the reality is that sometimes you do want to do impedance at open circuit potential. For instance, if you're doing GCD and it's a battery, most of the time you are doing impedance at open circuit, which is really just like zero current, because you don't want to be charging or discharging actively when you're getting the impedance profile. You want a nice stable system that's not running any charge or discharge, and you want to get the impedance profile at a particular state of charge or after a certain number of cycles, like after 100 cycles has it degraded. So you're doing EIS, you're trying to get those data, right? But the open potential of your system, your battery, your supercapacitor, anything, whatever, it's just some number. It is whatever it is. Like the measure OCP. You know, if it's a battery, it's like 3.5 volts, whatever. If it's a supercapacitor, maybe it's fully charged, it's 1 volt. Okay. So if your reference electrode is NHE and you want to do 1 volt versus NHE, then it's 1 volt. And if OCP is 0, I'm sorry, if OCP is 1 volt, because I said it's charged up, your OCP is 1 volt, and you pick 0 versus OCP, that's 1 volt versus reference. Those are the same thing. I'm saying the same exact thing, right? Like, it's just a reference. There's no, I think this question bothers me because there's no right answer. Should I do it versus OCP or versus reference? Neither. What potential do you want to do impedance at? That's the question you should be answering. What potential are you trying to do impedance at? If you don't have an answer to that question, you probably ought not to be doing impedance in the first place because you don't have a good reason for doing it. If the answer is, well, I'm trying to get the impedance at these different states of charge. Okay. What are the potentials at those states of charge? Well, at 0% state of charge, I'm at 3.1. And at 100% state of charge, I'm at 4.2. Then those are your potentials. Now you've answered your question. Now you know what you should do impedance at. Now you know what your set point should be. It's that simple, right? Versus OCP or versus ref is just the potentiostat, and the software is just doing algebra. It's doing arithmetic. That's it. That's all it's doing. If you know the OCP, that's your basis. If the OCP is 2 volts, then 2 volts versus OCP is 4 volts. 1 volt versus OCP is 3 volts, right? It's just the reference against which you're choosing a thing. Like, there is no OCP reference or whatever. It's just a software setting. It's just arithmetic. So fundamentally, I guess that's why it bothers me. It's like the answer to the question, there isn't an answer to the question. Figure out what potential you want to do impedance at, and then enter that potential. Right? That's how simple it should be. And then I guess, I don't know really what you mean by this, not to study the behavior of the electrode. Impedance is always studying the behavior of the electrode. That's what it's for. Whether you're at open circuit or you're at an applied potential, or you're at 100% state of charge or 0% state of charge, what are you doing if not studying the behavior of the electrode? You're studying the charge transfer resistances, the ohmic drop, the capacitances, the mass transport. All of that is the behavior of the electrode. You're always studying that. The reason I made this meme is because, like, and this is more for like liquid systems, like you're studying oxygen evolution or oxygen reduction or something, and your open circuit potential is like 0.4, volts or something. Well, your results are pointless. I joke, because, well, if you're trying to study oxygen evolution, you're not going to study that until you're above 1.2 volts versus NHE, whatever, right? Like, you're not going to, but you're still studying the behavior of the electrode. Like, fundamentally, you're getting the behavior at open circuit, which is mostly just double layer capacitance and like ohmic drop. So I guess I don't understand what it means when someone told you, oh, well, you're not trying to study the behavior of the electrode or whatever. It's like, no, you're always studying the behavior of the electrode, but just think outside of the settings in your software, right? Think about electrochemistry more broadly. I have a battery, a supercapacitor, a 3-electrode system, whatever I have, and I want to do impedance. Why and where? Like you probably don't think about that too much when you do CV or you do GCD, because maybe they're easier to conceptualize, or maybe you've done them so many times you kind of know what you're doing. But think about them more clearly. Like, I'm doing GCD. I'm applying, C over 5. I'm applying some current until the voltage reaches whatever. And then I'm applying the negative current until the voltage drops to whatever. There's current and voltages in there. And it's like, at different voltages represent different states of charge, right? And different currents represent different rates of charging and discharging, different speeds, right? Well, if the answer to why am I doing impedance is like with GCD systems, batteries and supercaps, usually it's because I'm trying to do one of two things. I'm trying to get the impedance, all of that behavior, those information at different states of charge, or after certain number of cycles to look at the aging and the degradation, right? So there's your answer. Well, I'm trying to get at different states of charge. That's different potentials. So I need it at certain voltages. So that's the voltage I need to do it at. Like, pick your voltage. Now, and there's more there. Like, well, if I pick 4 volts, but my open circuit is 3, I'm going to be like really jolting the battery with a lot of current immediately. So you're going to have to be careful it's not unstable and those kinds of things, right? There's other, practical limitations when you're doing impedance where you want to like make sure it's stable, steady, all of that kind of stuff. But don't be thrown by the logistics of what potential the software is asking you for. Like, you don't think that, I don't see a lot of people as thrown about what voltage they're at when they're doing CV or LSV. Now, some people, that is something which leads to our next question from Majulika asked about what you can probably, I'll shut up finally, and you can talk about like, the reference potential scale. You have some graphics for that, but I guess my parting wisdom is try to not think about impedance so differently as you do from every other electrochemical experiment when it comes to what voltage, what current, whatever. People get to this weird thing where it's like OCP and ref is like some nebulous concept. It frustrates me because it's like, just think the way that you think when you're doing it. Like, you don't think you go from 0 to 1 volt when you're sweeping your voltage. You don't think so heavily about like, well, that's where I want to be at potential. And then suddenly with impedance, it's like all of the logic about potential and current go completely out the window. And I don't know why. All right. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I think it's all good. I think that answers, hopefully answers.
Follow up,
TT's
TT.
questions.
I'm sorry if it sounded angry. I'm not really angry. I just, well, I guess I am a little angry, but it's not at you. It's more like just, I don't know. I don't know why it bothers me so much. I can't help it. But I'm happy to keep answering questions, and I promise to not be so mad. I don't promise that, but I appreciate you anyway.
All right. Do we want to address
why don't you answer
Prasad's
Majulika's question, and we'll get
first? Yeah, and then we'll get to Prasad later.
Yeah.
Okay, so Majulika is asking, thank you, sir. During setup, the reference electrode, should we add silver chloride with 3 molar KCl? If yes, why? So let's see, where does one begin? So the potential of your reference electrode fundamentally is based on the Nernst equation, right? Why do we add 3 molar KCl? So I'm actually going to go to this. So this is the Nernst equation, and the Nernst equation, just very simply put, just means that the potential that you measure of any electrode that's in solution is equal to a standard redox potential minus RT over NF times the natural log of the activity of the species in solution. So in this particular case, it's the species of the redox reaction. The redox reaction is the thing that governs the potential of your silver-silver chloride reference electrode. And for silver-silver chloride, I always generally get this wrong. Let me see if I can remember it. I think it is silver. I know that chloride minus has to be on this side. And then there's definitely a silver solid, and that's in equilibrium with I think it's AgCl plus an electron. I think I got that. All right. So this is the redox reaction of the silver-silver chloride reference electrode. And the activity of these, the activity of a solid silver chloride and the activity of a solid silver is 1. Right? And the activity of an electron is also 1. So when we do this, if we have it in this configuration, the potential is a function of a constant, some constants, but then the log of the concentration of chloride ions. So when you make a silver-silver chloride reference electrode and you have to have silver plus silver chloride, the concentration of chloride, in the case 3 molar from KCl, is going to determine what your redox potential is. That's it. So very, very simply, it's just like, why do you during the setup you should add silver chloride with 3 molar KCl? The reason is just because of this, and the reason why this is so high is that you want this concentration of chloride to be constant. So, and you'll notice this is a logarithmic natural log of the chloride ion concentration. So for you to have an approximately 60 millivolt difference in the voltage, your 0.3 molar KCl has to go to 0.3 molar KCl. Well, to go from 3 to 0.3 is a lot. That's like you have to lose a lot of chloride ion in your solution to make this 60 millivolt difference. So that's one reason. But if you had like 0.3 or 0.03, going from 0.03 to 0.003 is actually not that hard, depending on what your test solution is. But the main goal is that you keep it stable. And so that's why you use a concentrated, saturated potassium chloride solution when you make or construct a silver-silver chloride reference electrode. So I hope that helps. I hope that was very helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions about that or need further clarification on reference electrodes.
Everyone needs clarification on reference electrodes.
Yeah, it's just fine.
Someday,
happy to do it.
Someday I will get rid of them. Zameen has commented.
Oh, yeah.
They were at your ECS Case Western student chapter this week.
Yeah, on Wednesday. Yeah, I gave a quick talk on simulation, cyclic voltammetry simulation.
I was going to say, is a simulation like we're in the Matrix? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. You are. You're just, everything is just made up of boundary conditions.
Zeros and ones and boundary conditions.
Yeah, zeros and ones.
Finite or infinite boundary conditions.
Well, I guess in this case they're fine. For me, they were infinite because I was just doing a simple system. But yes,
it's good to have infinite boundary conditions. It's way more exciting.
Yeah. But yeah, hey, great. Thanks for stopping by, and I'm glad that you enjoyed the. I'm always happy to do a Case Western ECS student chapter thing. Actually, I don't know if I'll speak for you, but Neil and I are generally happy if it's easy for us to put on a webinar for a particular student chapter. So if you have a student chapter and you're trying to come up with events to do, it's easy enough for us to hop on a Zoom, well, not Zoom, but Restream call. Or if you have your own Zoom account, we can actually give a guest lecture. So we're actually we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I think I was just trying to remind myself when this happened. I guess, was it early this year? Yeah, it was early this year. Geez, the time flies. Yeah, it was back in April. I did one for the USC, University of Southern California.
Yeah.
I did ECS student chapter impedance, little lecture, whatever you want to say, like almost like personalized webinar, right?
Yeah.
And then last year, around this time in October, actually. So it seems like every 6 months or so, I'm doing one of these just by chance. At the University of South Carolina, we live somewhat close to, we're in North Carolina. So I did that one in person, but I did a seminar, webinar, whatever you want to say, not webinar because I was there. For some students at the University of South Carolina. That's one of the things that we really love to do.
Yeah.
Just as a general disclaimer, if you're part of a, actually anywhere really in the world, technically, because if it's online, we can connect with anybody in any country. We love doing these kinds of personalized whatever webinar. We can present on any of the topics that we talk about here, or that we have webinars like you just did the voltammetry series. We've done videos on how potentiostats work and impedance and voltammetry and all the things, right? We're happy to do these kinds of things. It's fun. We like connecting with you people on a more personalized basis. It's fun. So we're happy to do that. Just reach out to us where we can arrange those things.
And Zemena, I hope to see you. I know some people from Case Western usually has a good number of people who go to the ECS regular meeting in Chicago. So not next week, but the following week, the week after, I'll be in Chicago. The Hilton is where the ECS meeting is going to be. So please stop by the Pine Research booth, and I'll be there, and it'll be great to meet people and chat with you all.
Yeah. Okay, Prasad asked a question. I want help in interpretation of my impedance data. I'm ready to pay. That's nice of you. I suppose you must have some struggles figuring out what's happening. So I guess I'll just give a couple answers to this, Prasad, if you're still watching. First is that this is possibly something that we can do, although I will say it's not something that we have done very often. I have the ability to, within my company, professionally provide what we sort of call advisory services. I suppose in some sense, like there's different words out there and terms out there for you'll find like consulting, you'll find, advice, advisory. For us, there's sort of subtle differences, but technically like someone who maybe runs their own business, let's just say, and does consulting for whether it's electrochemistry or anything else, that's a different bit of a different kind of situation than this. Advisory tasks are more like I could almost in the same way that like if you purchase our equipment and our customers of our company, Pine Research, we provide advisory. My data looks like this. What's wrong? And we help troubleshoot with using our equipment, using our software. These are advisory kinds of things. And then we do here in this live stream. It's an educational advisory. I don't know what other sorts of similar terminology. We're providing advice or guidance, but it's not like these are our guesses or our opinions. Whatever you'd say, like professional, educated opinions or whatever. But in other words, what I can't provide for you, like legally, is like the answers for a fee. It doesn't work that way. Like if you were to say, I'll give X amount of dollars or whatever, and here's my data, tell me what this means. That isn't precisely what I'm like able to do, right? But it is possible. We'll have to connect offline to discuss some of these logistics and everything if it's possible. I could provide you some advising kinds of services, and we could discuss logistically what that means and what that doesn't mean. I just want to be clear about this. It's not exactly like, oh, if you just send me $20 now, I will give you all the answers to your impedance. Like it's not exactly like that, right? And then to a certain extent as well, anything like that falls under a similar kind of style that we do here, which is that when people ask questions like, well, what's the boundary of this that we just talked about, whatever, we're giving our best answer, what we believe is correct, but we could be wrong. We're not perfect here. We're not saying like and almost ever, right? I mean, this is the answer for sure. Like your thing means this. I mean, maybe we say that sometimes as a quick turn of phrase, but most of the time what we're doing is we're giving our opinion, educated opinions on things. And especially when it comes to impedance stuff as well, the interpretation of impedance data is very difficult. And so if you're looking to gain some insight onto, what your impedance means and what the interpretation of your circuit fitting or whatever it is, you are not necessarily going to get like the answer from me or from anyone else. Like I can certainly help you try to shed light on what I think is happening, but even then I would be very clear that like this is my estimation, this is my advice, again, professionally, just to be clear that it isn't, I'm not taking over your research. I'm not taking over your publishing life, right? It's like, I'm not saying, well, this is the answer. And so, I'm, you're sort of passing it on to me to give you the answer. That's not exactly how this works. I just want to kind of talk through that a little bit because this has come up in the past a couple of times, and I just wanted to be clear about some of those things. So I'll put what I'll do, Prasad, is put our email. I mean, you probably can find this other places as well. Email. And you can send me an email through that, and then we can kind of talk about the next steps logistically, how this might work. So I just wanted to talk through that a little bit.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Very good. All right. So I'll get to the next one. There are 2 questions up so far. Ahmed is asking about, hi, is there a proof for why in CV delta E is 59 or 57 millivolts per electron or per electron transfer, and for fast systems? I was never able to derive that from the Nernst equation. Good question. So, and I struggled with this for a long time. I'm like, why on earth is it like 57 or 59 millivolts? So one thing to keep in mind, very, very clear distinction. It's important to note this. The 59 millivolt difference has to do with how much does the potential change per order of magnitude, or per every like base 10, if you will, for the Nernst equation. So the 59 millivolts has to do with the Nernst equation. That's it. Like for every order of magnitude 10, factor of 10 change in the concentration ratio, you get a 59 millivolt difference. That is separate from the delta E between the anodic and the cathodic current in a CV. They are very similar numbers, 59 and 57 millivolts, and people get these 2 things confused almost all the time. So I just want to...
The Nernst one is 59, right? That's why I just did the calculation real quick to verify.
Yeah.
I forgot which is which.
Yeah.
The 57 is the peak splitting.
The 57 is
and
the peak
59
split.
is, I always screw that up. I just say 60 for both because I can't think about it.
And most of the time, like experimentally, you're gonna get something like, probably gonna get something like 65 or 70 in very good conditions, because like optimizing it for a perfect system mathematically comes out to 57. So the kind of derivation, if you will, where does 57 millivolts come from? Because 57 is the anodic and peak cathodic
CV delta E.
Yeah, CV
which is
delta
what he's
E's.
asking about. Yeah.
So that I also don't have a quote derivation for it.
Which equation does that come from? Is that the Randall sub? No.
Here's the thing. It doesn't come from. It doesn't like. In my view, it doesn't come from those equations directly. I mean, maybe there is a formulation, but it's a combination of when you take, if you were to mathematically do a CV by using the Nernst equation, the Butler-Volmer equation, mostly the Butler-Volmer equation, and mass transport, like looking at diffusion and modeling the diffusion of things. It just so happens that like as you're doing the CV, so let me here, this is like the easiest way to do it. I'm gonna go on our simulation software, and I'm going to show you where you get your 59 millivolts from. So I'm gonna launch
The 59 one's easy because
not 59.
that's
Yeah,
the Nernst one. Yeah, the
yeah, the
57.
57.
I'm trying to think if I've seen where that's before. I know you're right. Like it's a combination of because the peak shows up as a mixture
Yeah.
of Butler-Volmer and Cottrell equation, whatever.
Yeah.
And so the calculation's not straightforward necessarily.
And
The 59 one for the E,
yeah, for the change in the order in like the concentration or
yeah,
activity
that
of the
is easy.
species.
That's RT over NF.
Yeah.
basically, over natural log of E or
Yeah.
whatever.
So if I go to Aftermath Live and share this and go to CV. All right, so I'm going to simulate a simple CV with one electron transfer. Simulate this guy. Boom, I got it. This is the perfect CV. I have fast kinetics, it's 10. Diffusion coefficient's fast. I start with just A plus an electron going to B. And if I archive this voltammogram, which is a perfect, beautiful voltammogram, and I use some tools to actually determine the peak positions here. All right, it's one. Hope I get it. I have no idea if there's going to be a slight deviation or a slight error. These two, oh yeah, well these two are the same because I have it about 0.
56.
And that's 56. So just
Give
a
or take.
small rounding error
Mhm.
in like, did I get the position like exactly on, something like that. This is from computers and stuff. But what the software is doing, oops, let me go home. But what the software is doing is, and actually I have another, this is kind of a better way of showing this. Literally just talked about this at Case Western. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to switch to share. All right. So literally, this is, I hope you can see my screen.
Mhm.
All right. So this is a CV. In the CV simulation, there are a few things happening. And so below, I have the Butler-Volmer equation. I have the cyclic voltammogram here. And what I have here is it's a description of mass transport. The way we think about mass transport is what's called a method of finite differences, where the concentration of the redox species of interest is contained within a cell that is some distance away from the electrode surface. And diffusion is modeled by basically we gain and lose concentration to any one cell by molecules moving out and adjacent cell molecules moving in. That's how diffusion is modeled mathematically. This is diffusion, random walk, molecules moving left and right, back and forth. I'm going through this very fast. Normally, I'd have like a whole thing on this, but you can imagine if I only have A in solution for this A plus an electron going to B, when the voltammogram kind of starts, I have a pure, I'm only having electron transfer at the electrode surface. And that's going to create these kind of, actually I had an animation here, but it's going to create like, I'm going to lose all of the molecules here because thermodynamically and kinetically, the concentration of A at the electrode surface in a chronoamperometry experiment becomes like 0. And then the molecules from here have to move over diffusion-wise to get from here to here and ultimately to here, which is where the current flows. So when you go through a cyclic voltammogram and it's simulating, we're taking the data points, the potentials here, we're literally plugging them into the Butler-Volmer equation, and we're figuring out, well, which side is dominant, which side is active. When we reach points where, the potential here is giving me like a current value, this is the total current, it takes this, multiplies it by the concentration at the electrode surface, the cell J sub 0. And that gives me the current. And like when I'm at this point, it just means that diffusion for every single time point that has gone by, it just means that, well, the concentration in cell J equals 1, is super low. So I get less concentration, but molecules are still moving. So this is how, and then similarly, we've also been creating we've been creating B, the oxidized species, that this also plays a role. So all of this is to say that when you go through this whole exercise of looking at the concentration profile, while looking at the Butler-Volmer equation at each step in the potential with certain starting conditions, boundary conditions, you end up getting this shape, and it just so happens that these two peaks have 57 millivolts between them. So that's kind of the numeric approach, if you will, to getting that 57 millivolts. It's purely, I don't think it comes from like a bunch of equations and you plug numbers in and then this happens. It comes from treating mass transport as in a diffusion like system, and then when that happens, it you end up just getting like, oh, the peak, which represents the highest current, as a function, it's like at that potential you get the highest current because of the concentration at that particular time, and the voltage at that particular time, according to the Butler-Volmer equation, gives you a peak. And then when you go the other way, the concentration at that particular time and the voltage at that particular time gives you a peak. It's the highest point. And those always end up being 57 millivolts. So I don't know if that's a very satisfactory answer. It's not like, oh, the 57 millivolts corresponds to a fundamental principle of electron spin or something like that. It's like this mind-blowing revelation, like, oh my god, the universe, the answer to the universe is 47. No,
it's 57, not 42. It's
not 42.
57.
Yeah, that's right, 42.
So Ahmed, what I will do as well, just for what it's worth.
Ahmed thinks it's a good. Okay, all right, that answers
for
the
what
question.
It's worth. The 57, as Alex just explained, is hard. It's like a combination of different equations. It's probably hard to show the exact calculation out. But what I will do is I'll just show you very quickly where the 59 number comes from the Nernst. That is from the Nernst equation.
That's easier to show.
That one's easier to show. So the Nernst equation is, and there's a reason why I'm in Excel and not PowerPoint. I'll show you in a minute. But the Nernst equation is E is equal to E0 minus RT over NF times the natural log of the reaction quotient. That's the Nernst equation, right? Well, the 59 number comes from, in the 59, and this is not peak splitting again, as Alex said, but it's basically, and what you just explained actually in answering the other question about 3 molar KCl with whatever, the 59 comes into play because it's like based on the Nernst equation, every 10x change in concentration, for instance, can elicit a 60 millivolt, roughly 59 millivolt change in the potential you measure. And so by the Nernst equation, where does that come from? Well, it comes from all of this stuff, RT over F and the natural log part. So first what we do is, because we usually don't use natural log, we use log base 10. I can just rewrite this as E is equal to E0 minus RT over NF. I'm just doing simple mathematics of logarithms. So if this doesn't make sense to you, you might have to revisit some mathematical things.
Textbooks.
But yeah, exactly. So this is just the rules of logarithms, right? So if I want to go to log base 10, that's log of Q divided by log of E, the exponential number. So that these are equivalent, right? And now I've converted this to log base 10, and log of E is just a number, right? So what I have here is RT over F log E. These are all numbers, right? And then this is all per n. So there's an n here, but usually, again, you sort of have 59 per n. So n, we don't usually have a number. So this is 8.314. I'm using all SI units, right? 298 K, usually at room temperature, we see room temperature 25C. N, right? Okay, whatever. 96485. That's Faraday's constant, and then log of E. Oh, the log didn't make a zero, like an O. There we go. So, so what is this? We'll just do the numbers. So we have 8.314, 298, 9645, and log of E. That's the log of E. So what is that? Math. R times T divided by F divided by log of E. I'll multiply it by 1,000, so I get milli. 59 millivolts. There you go. That's it. That's the number. So that's where the number, that's where the 59 comes from. Literally just RT over NF, N, N. So this is millivolts per N, like electrode, right? That's it. That's where it comes from. Mm-hmm. So that's where the Nernst one comes from. Again, that's not the other one, but that hopefully kind of just shows you some simple math behind where the 59 millivolt thing comes from in the Nernst equation. So there you go.
I think his last comment was exactly the confusing part is that some papers talk about 59 millivolt per N for peak spooling. So at least, that's
like I said,
wrong.
I screw that up myself constantly.
Yeah.
When I see CVs and it's like, it should be 59. Sometimes I say 60. It's like, whatever. Yeah. It's like, it's all close. It's within a couple of millivolts. And like you said, no one in the history of mankind has ever gotten 57 in a real experiment. It's always 60 something, or there's rounding errors. There's just these things. But you are thinking very intelligently. Yeah. Ahmed is what I would, because you're recognizing that even though these numbers are similar, unlike me, that they actually come from somewhere different. And so you're thinking critically about this. It's a very wise, thought process. So kudos to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Walking in Physics,
I think so,
is the next one. Walking in Physics asks, can you share a good research paper or lecture slides on electrochemical techniques, especially for students who want to build a strong foundation in the electrochemical testing of zinc-ion batteries? Well, I don't have any of that stuff. I don't have slides, and I don't know of a good research paper.
Yeah. So research papers will do a very bad job of helping you learn how to do the research. They will do a very good job of helping you compare your results to try to verify if what you got was decent or not, as a comparison tool. But most often, we recommend very often, looking into the literature and seeing what other people are doing and trying to mimic those results. The tough part about that, of course, is that exactly how to do that is not very easily replicable. It's hard. If you read a paper on a zinc-ion battery, then you have to do it yourself. There's a lot of things that are probably practically not easily copied from the experimental section in someone's paper. It's hard, they'll be like, well, we made coin cells and we tested this and then we did this and that. And it's like, okay, well, how do I make mine? They skipped a whole bunch of steps practically of how to do that. I just don't have a good, you took this course. I don't know, is that something anybody can do? You took a good course on battery fundamental stuff. That wasn't specific to zinc iron, but it was battery stuff.
Yeah.
Don't you talk about that for a minute?
I mean, that was like a workshop. And I have a booklet. I don't have a PDF of lecture notes and stuff like that. That was a workshop that I took at Tufts. Now, first off, I should mention, there are tons of battery courses just out there, tons and tons of them. Ones that are specific to zinc ion, I think that are going to be a bit harder to find. I think people definitely have courses on just
lithium ion,
battery
in general,
just batteries in general. There's lots of content that ends up, getting created about these types of things. They start off with a lot of the fundamentals of electrochemistry. Two electrode cell, they may even cover a little bit of cyclic voltammetry, and then they start to cover some of the the engineering. It's a really strong engineering focused. Batteries are really engineering focused
Yes.
devices and
Yes.
problems. A lot of the
Which means there's not a lot of science involved.
yeah, which means it's like the the yeah, I mean, as a chemist, we care about electron transfer and
Don't say
bonds
we.
breaking.
I'm not a chemist.
Oh no, I'm saying we as chemists
Sure.
think about these types of problems, but we never think about well, yeah, the reaction's going to take long because you have to stir it for a long time.
Yeah.
We never think about that. We just oh well, if we mix these two things together, we get the heat up, and instead of just stopping there, we say, well, when we change the temperature, we're increasing, we're overcoming the activation energy barrier and all kinds of sciencey stuff. But with batteries and engineering, it's this thing weighs too much. It needs to weigh less.
You torqued it too much. There's too much pressure on the anode.
Pressure.
Those are the engineering kinds of things that dramatically impact your performance as well.
Yeah.
That engineers think about probably too much and don't think about the science. And then, chemists think about the science too much and don't think about the engineering. And we all need to kind of do a little bit of the other thing, probably, to be fair.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. Battery research in general is probably more heavily skewed in the engineering domain, if you will, than in the science domain. Obviously, there's absolutely overlap. Tons of science and chemistry and physics and real hard theoretical science involved with batteries. That's not to discount that at all, but there's so much engineering involved, which makes it a lot harder, to your point. And to a certain extent, I apologize because we're not providing you firm answers to this because I don't know if there are any. Again, there's a lot of battery courses out there. Some of the things that you'll run into perhaps is that a lot of these battery courses are very heavily academically skewed. And the practicality of them might not be as strong. I don't know. It doesn't mean that there aren't any. There very well may be some. As a side note, and I don't have any sort of imminent date for you, my guess hopefully is next year. But because I have this background in engineering and a strong and a background in batteries, I'm hoping to put together some webinars on batteries that will be a mixture of some of the theoretical content, how to calculate theoretical capacity and what's C rate and all that kind of stuff, but also some practical kinds of things. Now, to a certain extent, I will be limited in my efforts there because I don't have a battery manufacturing facility here. I work at a small company. I don't have, if anybody's ever been to or knows about, for example, Sandia National Labs here in the US, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, they have this amazing facility I visited a long time ago. I assume they still have it. It's they can make their own 18650 cylindrical cells, and with their own materials, they can calendar, they can make all this sorts of stuff. And it's incredible. And I was jealous. I saw it. I'm so jealous. They have this, they can make these batteries, they can test them and blow them up, and they can do all kinds of stuff. And it's oh my gosh, this is a battery playground for for an engineer. It's amazing. There's probably other places that have stuff like that, but the reality is that for the average person working in a laboratory with whatever your equipment you have, you might not have the access to all of those things. And so the practical, education, well, it's tough. What are you supposed to do, right? So I will be trying to help in that endeavor, is all I can say for now. And then, look around, and to a certain extent, wherever you are, right? You might have local, like you went to Tufts. It's Tufts University. It's in Boston, Massachusetts. We're in the United States. We're on the Eastern Coast. It wasn't too hard to get there. Even for us, in the United States is a big country. If there's a workshop over in Seattle, Washington, it's going to be a little hard to get to, even for us in the same country. So and if you're in India, if you're in China, if you're in Pakistan, you're going to have to hopefully find a workshop that's in your country, right? It's just, you're sort of, sometimes it's hopefully there's some local ones, and if there's not, it can be tougher. I understand that. I don't know what else to say other than spend a lot of time in the lab and we're here with this
Yeah.
this live stream, and in general, reach out to us through email. I don't know. I do my best to try to give people practical advice whenever I can on these kinds of topics, because I do know that it's tough, especially when you're starting these kinds of research projects. Like, what am I supposed to do? Right. That's one of my main, things I'm pretty passionate about, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Is this a lecture for CSBE 10th grader?
No.
Probably not. Also, this isn't really a lecture. This is like a live stream.
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry.
10th grade is CSBE.
I was learning chemistry in
CBS.
10th grade.
Yeah, I was
But,
learning chemistry, maybe physics. I don't know. If you're doing electrochemistry in 10th grade, good for you.
Yeah.
It's a little above most of the time. High schoolers. Electrochemistry is a tough topic for high school students because it requires some basic knowledge of chemistry and physics, and like electronics and things like that. There's like electrochemistry is like above some of these other, like from a difficulty or base understanding kind of perspective. So I'm always impressed with anyone in high school who expresses an interest in electrochemistry and wants to learn about it. But most of the time, this is not aimed at high schoolers, actually. But you're obviously welcome and happy to answer questions if you have some about electrochemistry. Let's see. TT next says, thanks for the thorough explanation. How would the behavior of the electrode change by changing the potential measured against? You had mixed understandings. I had asked what was the system, and so you said it was a supercapacitor of battery type 3 electrode. So yeah, first of all, I'm always like, I might have to do a little more reading myself. I kind of don't understand. I've seen this maybe I know from UTT, you've mentioned this before, and maybe a few others, that like a battery type supercapacitor that.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's almost like a counter type reference electrode. Like it's like two different things. Like that's not a good analog. I just thought it was funny.
Yeah,
I don't totally know exactly what that is, because batteries and supercapacitors are both similar devices that are charge storage devices, and they just have different kind of characteristics. Let's say, for example, supercapacitors usually have very quick charge discharge profiles, and more narrow voltage profiles, but they deliver charge quicker. Batteries typically have a slightly wider voltage, maybe not necessarily, maybe it's about the same, like voltage wise, like 1 to 1.5 volts. Maybe that's not so different, but batteries typically have slower charge discharge profiles. They store more energy, I think, but they deliver it over a longer period of time. Usually, I mean, you can fast charge a battery, but a little bit different. And the charge and discharge is done in some cases pretty similarly, which is usually galvanostatically, which is a GCD means. And so, to the crux of your question, how does the behavior of the electrode change by changing the potential measured against? Well, fundamentally, one of the things about your original question about what potential to do impedance at and everything is a little bit fundamentally off when it comes to systems like batteries and supercapacitors, because they're usually controlled galvanostatically, which means that you're usually doing impedance galvanostatically, which means you're actually not clarifying the potential at which you're doing it. Galvanostatic impedance, like the vast majority of the time, you can think of, if you want, as being at OCP or OCV. Because it's galvanostatic, you're controlling the current and you're measuring the potential. And so what you're doing is you're controlling the current. So your set point is not a potential. You can't really do galvanostatic impedance at 400 millivolts. That's a contradiction in terms. You know what I mean? You can't control the current and have it be at a potential. It's one or the other. You can do galvanostatic impedance at a set point of 100 milliamps, but that would be maybe a bad idea, because if you're, for example, have a set point of some current, so your baseline of your impedance is not a potential now, it's current, you will be actively charging or discharging your battery supercapacitor while doing impedance. And if you're actively charging or discharging your cell while you're doing impedance, it's just definitionally not stable. Like, it's changing. The voltage is changing. The condition of your system is changing as you're charging it or discharging it. It's changing, right? And so one of the aspects of impedance that's very important is that it be stable. And if you're actively charging it or discharging it, it is not stable. So sort of by definition, you don't want to be having a set point galvanostatically to be charging or discharging your cell while doing impedance, which means you are definitionally having zero current as your baseline. And so what is zero current? That's open circuit, right? So just to reiterate, when you're doing impedance, your baseline is almost always open circuit. Now, what that open circuit potential is will depend on what you did to your battery or your supercap before you started doing the impedance. So if you did like a GCD test where you charged it up from 0 to 1 volt, whatever the voltage is, right? And then when you release the current, if it's a charge storage device, it would stay at 1 volt. Like in theory, I guess. I don't know. Maybe your system is a little different or something. But like with a battery, if you charge it, it's a charge storage device, so it retains its voltage, which is its like state of charge. Like that's why it works. Like if it didn't hold its voltage, it wouldn't be a particularly good battery. There might be some follow-ups here.
Yeah,
let me know
it's got a couple follow-ups.
it's a
Yeah,
supercapacitor that has a mixed charge storage mechanism of redox Faraday behavior and capacitive behavior. Okay. It's linked to the battery since redox is on the surface and deep in the bulk of the electrode as in batteries. That's why they refer to batteries. Normally supercapacitors only store on the surface. That's right. And capacitor. So you have both. So you have almost like a capacitive kind of thing and a sort of intercalation for structure. Okay. Interesting. So again, fundamentally, I'm guessing that this is going to, based on what you described it as, this is going to function in a way where you put some current into it and its voltage will change. And so the simplest way to think about that is its state of charge, right? So if it goes between 0 and 100% state of charge, the answer to your question of how does the behavior change by the potential? Well, how does the behavior change at different states of charge? That's the question you're answering, right? So if you have your battery fully discharged at whatever I'll just say 0 at whatever the voltage, it might be 4 volts to 6 volts. It might be 1 to 2, 0 to whatever. Let's just say 0 volts is fully discharged and you do impedance. You're probably going to do galvanostatic impedance again, under most conditions. And so the potential is 0, like 0 volts, whatever, is your 0% state of charge. And so you're getting the characteristics of your battery at a fully discharged state. Then you charge it up. You provide a bunch of current until the voltage goes up to 1 volt, whatever the top voltage is. And then hopefully you stop the test, right? You hit the trigger voltage, OCB, maybe it lags a little bit and then settles at 1 volt, 990 millivolts, whatever the number is, right? But it's at 100% state of charge. Now you do impedance again, galvanostatically, with 0 offset. So it's at OCV, which is 1 volt, 100% state of charge. Now, again, the behavior, the characteristics you're measuring are the battery at a fully charged state. And what you'll probably see with most batteries, it's like this. With supercapacitors, I would guess it's kind of the same. The charge transfer resistances, the capacitances will be different. And in fact, that you can think that should make sense. For instance, the battery at 100% state of charge has all of this energy stored up, whether it's capacitively or, as you said, the insertion sort of intercalation battery phenomenon, right? It has all this energy stored, like chemically, it's ready to deliver that energy. If it's fully charged, it can discharge and deliver energy for you. So it has a very low resistance because it's like ready to deliver energy. But as you start discharging your battery and you get all the way down to close to 0%, the charge transfer resistance should go up most of the time, because if it doesn't have any energy to deliver, if it's fully discharged, well, then it's going to have a high resistance. It's not going to be easily delivering energy for you anymore. So that's some of the differences between the behaviors, I guess you'd say, at the different potentials that you're at when you're measuring impedance. I hope that kind of talks through some of that for you.
Yeah, and of course, TT, you can always ask more questions as
Yes.
always.
I hope I wasn't as mean that time.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I think I was a little more happy and calm.
Yeah.
I got it out of my system, so
Got
I
it.
feel a little better.
All right. I think the next question is from Lil Crasher. Lil Crasher's asking, what does it mean when it's written negative electrode potential or positive electrode potential? It's related to oxidation and reduction, but I don't understand it. And what exactly even is electrode pot? Maybe.
So the
means
follow-up
electrode.
was, can you explain electrode potential and its meaning with respect to oxidation reduction? So this is right up your alley. This person wants an explanation of potential.
Yeah.
How much time do you have?
Yeah, I know. I might so I can talk about this, Little Crasher, but I would say one thing that'll be very
the first
helpful.
webinar you did was like
Yeah.
perfect for this.
So the first webinar I did, I'll put a link to that in the description, which is helpful. It'll be up for at least a while, but the first webinar that I gave recently was on this subject, and so I'm gonna type this in. This gives you a very detailed description of what exactly is the electrode potential. Now, one thing I didn't necessarily do, yeah, because he wants to describe what is the electrode potential with respect to oxidation and reduction. Because you're asking a little bit about what does it mean when you have like a negative potential and a positive potential. So first, let's just talk about negative and positive potentials. So negative and positive potentials only make sense with respect to something. So for example, I'm actually going to showcase, this is part of that webinar that might be helpful. But let's say I have, this is just generally talking about reference electrodes. And let's say I have the standard hydrogen electrode at 0. I have A plus an electron goes to B. That is my reduction reaction, and it occurs at a negative potential. And I have this oxidation reaction. C is going to D plus an electron, and it has a positive potential. So if I have, say, silver chloride as my reference electrode, if I'm measuring or studying this oxidation reaction, then if I had SHE, this is 0.550 versus SHE, but it's 0.353 volts versus silver chloride. And you can see on this number line that the distance from here to here is shorter than the distance from here to here. And as a result, the potential that you measure is smaller. It's a smaller positive potential. You can do the same thing with the reduction reaction. Instead of measuring this minus 0.67 volts versus SHE, you'd measure minus 0.867 versus silver chloride. Now, in this particular example, I wanted to showcase the fact that you can have what I would describe as, let's say, a magic reference electrode. I just made this up. It's 0.9 volts. And this, if I was studying this oxidation reaction and I used my magic reference electrode, I would measure the oxidation at a negative voltage, a negative potential, even though it's positive. So when we say positive or negative potential, it just means that it's just relative. Like, because in this case, the potential of this reaction is negative with respect to something that's to the right of it, but it's positive with respect to something that's to the left of it. So negative and positive potential mean that, just kind of on a very basic level. Now, generally speaking, if once we get past that, we can make some general inferences that when we have negative potential, we are building negative charge on an electrode surface. Actually, these are some slides, for example, from the webinar that you can watch. Here, I have negative, I'd say maybe I have a negative potential because I've built up negative charge on the electrode surface. So if I build up more negative charge, the potential of my electrode will become more negative. Vice versa, I don't have any examples, but if I had positive charge on my working electrode, the potential would be positive generally, or it would become more positive. And then you can end up getting these interesting, these pictures, sort of say, of like buildup of negative charge, buildup of positive charge at the electrode interface. So that is what that first off is what negative and positive potential is, and like what it refers to or relates to. Now, when it comes to oxidation and reduction, the way that you can there's actually several ways of thinking about it, but those potentials all exist on that scale that I showed you, right? And I showed you like, oh, the oxidation reaction occurs at this potential versus silver chloride or versus my magic reference electrode. So so that potential that I had, the 0.55 volts or negative 0.55 volts, that represents in a way a kind of a space in energy where that electron transfer reaction would occur thermodynamically. So when you have an oxidation or reduction reaction, you're ultimately talking about whether or not something is thermodynamically favorable to occur. And we use the Nernst equation to describe that. So let me just go back to useful equations. Nernst equation. Let me lasso all this stuff out of the way. So the redox reaction, the E naught, or even the potential, if you will, is related to this is related to this redox reaction. There is a kind of a the activity or concentration of these species govern a standard potential. Basically, when these two guys are equal to each other, you have the E naught, because when the natural log is 1, this is 0, the potential is equal to the E naught, and that's just a potential. So when you move away from that potential, you're going to favor the concentration of either, well, I say the reduced species, or you're going to favor the concentration or activity of the oxidized species, depending on what the potential is of your system. So in things like cyclic voltammetry, when you change or sweep the potential to, quote, find the redox potential, you're basically adjusting this guy such that this guy changes. And when this guy changes, current has to flow. And that's because the only way for me to get more ox or more red is for this redox reaction to occur. So that is that's how we can relate the electrode potential to the redox, oxidation and reduction reactions, and even the redox potential of our species. And I think this makes sense, because this, as you explain electrode potential, what does it mean with respect to oxidation and reduction? So hopefully that makes sense, little crasher. And if you have any further questions about that, I can help you describe it some more. But that's the basis of it.
Very good. Any question that gets Alex to talk about the Nernst equation? It's a good question.
It's a good question,
because Alex loves the Nernst equation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the next is a couple of questions from Nitik Rajput. And the first is, what is the difference between the cathode and the anode? The second is, teach me how to balance redox equations having ions in it. I'll try to tackle these for you one at a time. So what's the difference between the anode and the cathode? So you'll find different definitions. I tend to think of it maybe one way. You'll find technical definitions of like the electrode that does X, Y, or Z. I tend to think about it in terms of a battery. So I'll just share my thoughts with a battery context. But if you have an anode, right, and you have a cathode, okay, when it comes to a battery, the way that I think about it is that you have charging and you have discharging, right, of a battery. You can think about a battery, right? If it's your phone, you might have this kind of thing going on with your phone where you have, 25%, 50%, 75%, 100% state of charge, right? And so if your battery is being charged or your battery, where's red? Why can't there it is? Or your battery is being discharged, right? Okay. So the way that I think about this is that during discharge, let me make sure I say the right thing here. Okay. So during discharge, okay, the anode is undergoing an oxidation. The cathode is undergoing a reduction. Okay. And during, I want the right green. I need the right color. That's the one. And then during charge, it's the opposite. Oh, that's not thick enough. You can't see that. Reduction. Okay. And this side is oxidation. And so what I'll do is I'll clarify. This is charging. Charge. Right? And this is discharge. Okay. So red, discharge down, the potential is going down. So one way that I just, for example, think about anode and cathode, for instance, is that if you want to just pick one, right? The cathode is the side that undergoes reduction during discharge. So you have actually 4 possible explanations for this. You could say the cathode is the one that undergoes reduction during discharge, or the anode is the one that undergoes oxidation during discharge. We tend to think about discharge as the default, if you will, because that's when you're getting energy from the thing. That's when it's delivering energy for you, like a charge storage device, whether it's a supercapacitor or a battery or whatever. But you can think about it during charge as well. I mean, it doesn't matter. So again, the anode could be the one you could think about the anode as the one that's reducing during charge. It doesn't really matter how you think about it. But these are sort of the redox related ones, I guess. And just by convention, we tend to put cathode has a plus and anode has a minus. I don't know. You can look at that if you want, I guess, like minus. I don't know. I want to get too heavy into the minus is it's losing an electron or gaining an electron. There's some of that. Some of it's just convention. One of them has to be plus, one of them has to be minus. But that is sort of my, I don't know. The way that I think about it is that the cathode's the one that's doing the reduction reaction when you're discharging the cell. That's how I think about it. And so the reduction is happening. Electrons are going towards the cathode during discharge. That's physically what's happening. So, that's, I don't know. That's my answer for that. Oh, sorry. The other part of your question was balancing stuff. Yeah. So I'll try to do one live with you. Let's see if I can think this through and not screw it up. So as I teach it, then I do it terribly. So balancing stuff. I mean, if you've learned stoichiometry, it's not that different, right? You have something on the left, something on the right, and you're trying to make them match, right? So when you have electrons present, you have to make the charge match. So let's take something like the oxygen reduction reaction, or the ORR, right? So you have oxygen, you have protons, you have electrons, and you get water. Water. Okay. So we have to match this, right? So the way I would do this, I don't know, it's no different. You just got to make sure that the pluses and the minuses kind of match up and the elements match up. So I'll do this, I don't know, with some stuff and then cross it out. Let's pick some blue color. So it's like, all right, well, I have 2 O's over here, so I need a 2 here. All right, well, now I have 4 H's here. Okay, so there's got to be 4 H's over here. And now, so I've got 2 O's, 2 O's. All right, so that matches. I've got 4 H's. Sorry, yeah, 2 times 2 is 4 H's. So I have 4 here. Now the last thing here is that I have electrons, right? So the charge there has to be charge balance. So I have 4 pluses on here. This is all 0. So the right side is all 0. So the left side has to be 0 also. So, I mean, hopefully you can see this is pretty easy, but it's like I have 4 pluses here. I have a minus, so I need 4 minuses here. So 4 pluses and 4 minuses, there's 0, charge, whatever, electrons on this side, 0 proton electron charge on this side. So everything works out. I have 4 H's, 4 O's. Here I have, oh, this should be 2. No, that's 2. I'm sorry. I can't count. I can't count. That's not 4. That's 2 because numbers are hard. 2 O's and 4 H's, right? So I have 2 O's here, 2 O's here, 4 H's here, 4 H's here, and then 4 charges. So there you go. That was just a way to talk through it. So it's stoichiometry. It's like similar thing. Usually you just sort of increase the numbers till it's the same on both sides progressively or whatever. And now you're just adding the charges and making sure the charge on both sides is the same. That's all. So hopefully that's one short example for you, just to put a quick bow on it. If you need more help on that or something, just let us know.
Ahmed's next. Ahmed is asking, I want to do CV on a solid polymer electrolyte containing lithium salt. Is it possible, relevant, to do CV with 2 electrodes? And in case I want to add a reference electrode, how to position it in a solid state coin cell?
Yeah, it's possible and relevant to do CV with 2 electrodes, but you have to be careful. One of the things that I do when I try to explain this is it's CVs have a place with battery tests, but it's to be very careful. So think about a battery this way. Usually you charge or discharge a battery, right? How do we do that? We usually apply a current until it reaches the upper or lower voltage. Usually you do this over an hour, half an hour, 2 hours, it's a longer period of time, right? If you're familiar with C rates, you'll have something like C over 2, C over 3, C over 4. That means that it's taking you 2 hours or 3 hours to charge up the battery or discharge the battery. Because, you can do faster rates, but usually the charge discharge takes some time because we slowly get the battery up and down. And if you charge it and discharge it really, really fast, it can be bad. The performance can be poor, right? Okay. So that process, again, charging and discharging, where you apply a current and wait till the voltage reaches one limit or the other, that takes an hour, or let's just say an hour, right? Flip your thinking to CV. CV is not the same. CV is now we are not controlling galvanostatically, we're controlling it potentiostatically. CV means that we are sweeping the voltage from one limit to another. Now, I just said when I charge or discharge the battery, I'm waiting until the voltage gets from one to the next, and it takes an hour. So if I'm thinking about CV and I'm intentionally moving the voltage from one thing to another, it should take about an hour. Like if I want to compare, I want to have a similar situation, right? Because if you're thinking about CV the way that we usually think about CV with like a 3 electrode system or platinum or whatever, right? We go 100 millivolts per second or 50 millivolts per second. And we go like, and then back and then back and then back. Well, we're traversing a huge amount of voltage, like a volt or 800 millivolts or whatever, within 2 minutes. So with a battery context, this is why it's dangerous. If you do CV really fast, that's like the equivalent of charging your battery in 2 minutes. That's way too fast. It's way too fast. So typically when you're doing CV, one of the things that I would say is yes, it's possible and yes, it can be relevant, but you're going to need very slow scan rates most of the time. Now just do some calculations. If you have 1 volt of distance, whatever, right? And you do 1 millivolt per second, that's 1,000 millivolts. 1 millivolt per second is going to take 1,000 seconds. That's still that's like 20 minutes. That's still probably too fast. Like, can you charge up a battery in 20 minutes? Yeah, that's fast though. It's fast. So maybe you want to do 0.1 millivolts per second. That's 10,000 seconds over 1 volt, right? Okay, that's what is that like? That's like 3 hours, something like that. Okay, maybe that's fine. That might be good. Maybe that's too slow. Maybe 0.5 millivolts per second. My point is, if you're doing CV, be very careful about your sweep rate. It's probably going to be somewhere between 0.1 and 1 millivolt per second. If you're going to be doing something relatively comparable, because if you're sweeping from your low to high or either way voltages too fast, it's like a very rapid discharge or charge of your battery. And that's not always a good idea. It could be dangerous. You might saturate the current. You might damage the battery. Okay. So be careful. Adding a reference electrode to a solid state coin cell, that's real tricky. It is possible. Some people have done things where it's like these Frankenstein, things, like you literally have to like jam something in the side because it's tricky. Like the reference can be sometimes like a piece of metal, like steel, or even a piece of lithium. It can be some other material, but you have to do a few things. You have to physically put it somewhere in the coin cell. The coin cell's like 3 layers. It's very tight. So there's not a lot of space in the first place. Secondly, is you have to put it somewhere where it's not going to short circuit. Because if it's electrically conducting, like it's usually a piece of metal, you're not going to get like a silver chloride reference electrode with a frit into a coin cell. So if you put it in, it has to be like insulated somehow, because if the reference electrode is touching your anode or your cathode, well, now it's part of the anode or the cathode, and you don't have a 3 electrode system at all. You've shorted out your reference electrode. So I don't have a good advice for this. I know some people have done specialized things where they like drill a small hole in the side of the coin cell or an 18650 somehow, and they jam a reference electrode in, and it's insulated carefully. And it's, and I know that some people have tried this and their batteries go completely like bananas, and bad stuff can happen because you accidentally create a hard or a soft short. You cause a leakage, you cause moisture to get in. Like it's really tough. It's one of the main reasons why typically real batteries, people don't use reference electrodes. It's really physically hard to get one in there. So my advice probably is to not use a reference electrode, especially with coin cells. It'd be really hard. In making electrical contact with this stuff. A coin cell has 2 sides. It's like the top and the bottom. So you have to make another like electrical connection somewhere that's not short circuited. There's a spacer between the gasket between the two sides, that anode and cathode. So now you have a third one you have to somehow keep isolated, insulated. Maybe there's a coin cell architecture out there, like hardware, where they have a reference provision, but most don't. So if it's something that you are a little unfamiliar with, I would say be very careful, just even approaching to get a reference electrode in a hardware of a battery. It's really tricky.
Okay.
Sharon, I think, has next question.
Sharon has a question.
This is interesting.
How the electron donating and electron withdrawing functional groups, affects redox potentials, considering their absorption and inhibition abilities on metal surfaces.
I think about this more about how they affect the like conductivity, but how they affect the redox potentials is an interesting question.
So I'm imagining what you're talking about is you have like an inorganic complex. You have like iron or cobalt or tungsten, whatever, and then you have ligands around it, and those ligands can be electron donating or electron withdrawing. And typically what happens, I guess if I thought conceptually about this, if I have like an iron 3+ and I have something that's electron donating, or I switch from a ligand that is more electron donating, I would imagine it's harder to reduce that iron 3+ to iron 2+ because it's already got some additional electron density around it. So you would see a noticeable change. You'd see an increase in the redox potential. It would be more negative to reduce iron 3 plus to iron 2 plus if you had an electron donating group. Conversely, if you had an electron withdrawing group and you made that iron 3 plus even like more positive, basically, then it's much easier to for it really wants to get an electron. It may even be able to do it at a pretty positive potential. So that's how I think about how changing the functional group to being more electron donating or more electron withdrawing would affect the redox potential. If the electron transfer is a homogeneous electron transfer to the metal center, you can have charge transfer at the ligand for when you're doing electrochemistry, intercharge transfer bands and stuff. So now, with regard to how do these ligands or functional groups absorb or inhibit metal surfaces of your electrode, well, the electron transfer can occur between like 1 to 2 nanometers away from the electrode surface. So if it's a homogeneous outer sphere electron transfer system, then the ligand won't stick to the electrode surface. But if it's heterogeneous and the ligand's got to like chemically bond to the electrode for the electron transfer to occur, then it's harder. It's much harder. So the electric field effect can't, it depends on how big these molecules are, but usually these molecules, the ligands are still sufficiently small in size. I'm thinking about like pyridyl groups or bipyridyl groups, things like that. Those are still small enough in size that you'll still get an electric field effect and change the potential as the molecule gets to the electrode surface. So that's kind of my 2 cents. It really depends on what your ligands are and if it's electron donating or withdrawing. But that's my hopefully Sharon, that's helpful. I could also be completely wrong. It's like, oh, it turns out when you're withdrawing energy, it makes it harder. I'm like, oh, that doesn't make intuitive sense. But
it's a good guess as any, as far as I'm concerned.
The only thing I would also mention is that electron transfer is also affected by you'd want to look at the d orbitals of your molecule because it may be the case also that the electron transfer is can be limited by spin. So sometimes the oxidation state of a complex, like it's not just like, oh, it goes from iron 2 plus to 3 plus, but that transition may involve an electron spin between the d orbitals. And when if the spin has to flip, then you have a forbidden transition and the kinetics are super slow. So your redox potential gets like, super big. You might not even see the redox activity. So there's stuff like that you have to consider with these inorganic complexes. But it's a lot of fun. Lots of fun thinking about these things.
I don't have to consider anything. You can't make me. You can't make me consider inorganic compounds.
Yeah.
I'm glad you explained that because I don't have enough knowledge of that topic.
No,
that's helpful.
No, yeah, absolutely. Hopefully that helps, Sherwin.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. All right, I think we probably have time for one more set of questions here from Faisal on LinkedIn, actually. And I'll try to kind of talk through these in the next couple minutes, but then we are close to our finishing time, I would say here. But Faisal says, I'm working with a zinc-ion battery, but I have confusion about the active mass calculation for specific capacitance. How I calculate after casting cathode materials on the graphite disc. So I'm trying to think. I mean, for the most part, it's usually just a before, you're just massing before and after from your substrate. So usually, I mean, I haven't made zinc-ion batteries, but I have made lithium-ion batteries, and I'm assuming it's a relatively similar kind of a process. But you have a substrate, in a lithium-ion battery, it's something like copper or aluminum. I guess a graphite disc is a substrate for a zinc-ion battery here. Okay, so in my lab, we have a core test electrochemical machine where I can command, like after 0.1 millivolts per second automatically start. Oh, sorry. That was, I don't know if you're fault. That's a separate question. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to continue my thought on this. So in other words, your process is to take the mass of your disk, by itself, cleaned and ready to go. And then you're going to, however the deposition works for your active material, you're going to deposit, it's usually like painting it on, Dr. blading, spraying, something like that. Usually there's a drying process. And then you're going to mass your disk afterwards, and the difference is your active material, right? And so, a lot of times what it is it's something like, I guess I would describe it almost like you have your substrate, right? And that has mass, so mass of my substrate, whatever it is. And then you're going to get your film, you're going to cast your film, your cathode, your anode film, and then you're going to get the total mass, right? So like M total minus the mass of your substrate is equal to mass of your film or your cathode, whatever. I'll just put F for film. So then you have the mass of that, right? Okay, well, you also have to know, for example, that I had an ink and I used 90% cathode, 5%, this was whatever cathode material, right? Let's say 5% binder, maybe. Usually you have something in lithium ion, it's like PVDF, it's some polymer. And let's say you have 5% carbon. It's usually pretty common to add a little bit of carbon for conductivity. So what you're going to do is then you're going to say, okay, well, I got my M sub F, my mass of my film, and then I'm going to take 90% of that. 0.9 times MF is active, material mass. Okay, so that's some number of grams or milligrams or whatever. And then if you know your theoretical capacity, so usually, again, for lithium ion, I assume it's similar for zinc ion, there's some like theoretical capacity is, whatever, it's like 1,000, I'm just making up a number, milliamp hours per gram. So you're going to multiply that by my active 0.9 MF, whatever this number is, right? And so that will give you X milliamp hours because the grams goes away. So this is telling you the capacity of your actual battery. It's let's say this was 0.5 grams. So this is 500 milliamp hours. So that means you should be able to put 500 milliamps into this battery for 1 hour. So like this is just the kind of the simple calculation of your mass of your active material. I hope that's what you're asking. If that's a little too simplistic, I'm not sure, but it sounds kind of like you're asking that, sort of working through those numbers. And so hopefully that kind of talks through that process of calculating, because ultimately when you're making your own cathode or anode material, you're trying to figure out with your potentiostat, for instance, like how many milliamps or whatever do I put in to make my experiment work? And so it's as simple as that. You're figuring out the mass that you put on, take out your auxiliary materials like your binder or your conductivity enhancer or whatever, multiply by the specific capacity, and it should give you exactly how much current it can take, what its actual capacity is, something like that. Should we? I think might have to call it here. What do you want to do?
I think we might call it here. I don't know enough about some of the other things, and but they're great questions. We can try to answer them next time. We will be here next week.
Yes, we should be here next week.
But if we didn't get to your questions, we apologize. Type your questions in. Like you'll see if you follow the YouTube channel or the LinkedIn, Pine Research LinkedIn channel, you'll see an upcoming event.
Yeah, for next week.
And if you type your question in there, we'll definitely
we'll have it because this event is over now. We do this for 2 hours. So apologies for if you've shown up now and we're about to finish up. But yeah, the one that we're about to refresh our
Yep.
company, our YouTube, or our LinkedIn page, in the next 20 minutes or
20
something,
minutes,
or
yeah.
whatever. And you'll see next week's event, and you can type your questions ahead of time, and we'll answer
make
them
sure to
first thing
Yeah.
next week. But for now, we have to sort of, unfortunately, call it a day.
Call it a day. Yeah,
Call
we've
it a
been here for a
weekend,
while.
everything. So yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody again for another fun episode. We will be back next week for another episode.
Yep.
And until then, I hope everybody has a great weekend and rest of your Friday. Maybe it's already Saturday for you.
Yeah, that's
in
true.
which case, enjoy your weekend, and
Yeah.
we'll see everybody next week.
Bye.